Hey, everybody. Welcome back to our podcast, Channeling Joan, with Brenda
And me, Shirley.
Shirley the Psychic. We are going to get right into it right after I mention and remind you that Channeling Joan is a podcast in which Joan Rivers has agreed from the other side to make a showing. We don't know when, how much, or what she's going to be saying, but she said she would participate in this podcast, and so we're confident that she will, and we trust whatever she has to contribute to the podcast. So we're going to get right into it today. Our subject matter is going to be Shirley's book, Gripping Tales of a Seemingly Simple Psychic, which is a book that was written and published in 2016. Essentially, it is a biography of Shirley, the psychic, and it tells her story all the way from childhood up into 2016. And a lot has happened since then, but yes, this is her life up until that point. And it's a good book to give an introduction sort of to the psychic world, and it's just interesting to know how it came about, how she discovered that she had this skill and ability. God-given talent. So, Shirley, we're going to start from the beginning. Okay. And we're just going to go over a little bit in the beginning chapters that we think might be of interest to you. The book is available, by the way, and we'll have more information for you at the end of this podcast, how you can acquire your own copy. And we highly recommend it because, like I said, it's a good introduction to things. So, Cheryl, Chapter 1. Chapter 1 talks about. I'm going to actually read a little excerpt from Chapter 1. We're going to go right into Shirley's childhood, and one sort of rather peculiar thing that Shirley would experience, and sort of still does, but in a different way now that she's more of an advanced psychic. Let me read a little bit of the beginning, and then we'll talk to Shirley about it. Chapter 1, it's called In the Beginning. Shirley. How strange, I thought. I could actually hear my name emitting from those vibrating grids in the foggy air. Shirley! It was muffled, but I could hear it, plain as day, amidst a loud buzz of static vibration. I focused my eyes, trying to determine what was making that rhythmic tapping sound. Huh? A suspended piece of chalk? When I looked up to see where that chalk was coming from, I could utter only one word. Oops. There stood my second grade teacher, tapping her foot and holding a piece of chalk in front of my face. She was not smiling. How long had she been calling me? Hard to tell. All I knew was it was my turn to solve the problem on the board, and that was a problem. I missed the entire lesson on how to do it. I was too busy doing what I thought surely everyone else was doing, watching the air, and boy, was it entertaining. Shirley.
Yes.
What are we talking about here? What do you mean you were watching the air?
Well, at that moment, missing a whole lesson, that means time just slips away. It's like watching a grid of static, electricity, just moving, but moving in a very interesting way that kind of puts you in a trance.
And were you able to see the children in the classroom? Or were you able to see
I just kind of blocked everything out. Well, and actually, I thought everyone could see this, amazing grid of electricity and fun dancing around and just unfolding into different designs, like geometric kind of designs. And it was just so interesting that, I didn't know I was in a trance.
And what were you seeing? I mean, what did you learn later that you were actually looking at?
Later I learned that I was really diving into different dimensions, seeing different realities, and which made it easier to use different gifts in the new psychic with my new psychic ability. So I was able to see and understand it a lot more. And actually, it's a lot quicker now. I mean,
Right.
now I don't even need to. I mean, I could if I want. If I wanted to lay down, I could watch the dimension unfold like that. But now, when I use my psychic abilities, I see directly. It's just so quick. Less than a millisecond, I could see and understand, and it's just gotten a lot better.
You're definitely more.
And hopefully, it'll still continue getting better.
But at the time, you didn't know.
At the
what
time,
you were
I did
looking
not
at.
know. I was
Yeah.
only 5 years old, or I was just. That's the start of it.
Yes. Okay. And there were lots of signs actually when you were a child and even a baby. They were signs of something, but you didn't know what, obviously. And,
Well,
and neither did Mom. Mom didn't know
Yeah,
what it meant.
well, Mom did say that, I would lay in my crib for hours just staring, which I imagine, as an infant, that I was probably seeing the same thing that I witnessed when I was 5. But I would make a certain vibration sound, and it would just go on for a long period of time, and she wondered, if I was okay. I would just kind of just different sounds that she was unfamiliar with.
That you later learned that babies who make those sounds.
I did hear from another podcast or YouTube that usually kids that had that were at a higher vibration or would have certain abilities later on in life.
So it was a precursor to what was coming, for
Yes.
sure. Only we didn't know it until way later, actually.
Yeah.
But things continued to happen as you began to grow, and there is in the next chapter, which we call Faith, a showing of something rather extraordinary for a young child. Can you just briefly tell us what happened with that?
Is this the chalk?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yes. Well,
Without getting into too much detail.
yeah.
Just-
I was
You were
obsessed with my teacher
Okay,
at
yes,
the time.
and what was so? Because you always said that you were obsessed with it. What was it? About it?
I was obsessed. She had this little metal device, a little device that held a piece of chalk. That when you push it up, the chalk would come out. And we didn't have a lot when we were kids, so that to me was so cool. I wanted one so badly. At least I wanted a piece of chalk. I thought maybe I could make a little metal device or something. So that day, on my way home, I said, I'm going to. This is before the law of attraction. Before I know about the law of attraction just till recently, but I guess at that time I was using the law of attraction. And when I got home, I was very faithful. I said, God will help me find a piece of chalk. And I even made up this little song. I want to find a piece of chalk. I will find this piece of chalk. It was just an unwavering faith I had. And I looked everywhere, in drawers and then I just knew where that piece of chalk was.
Okay.
And
Well, we're not going to get into
Okay.
that. They can read. They can read that in the book. But what was amazing was that you did materialize a piece of
I
chalk.
certainly did.
Just
And
by- 'cause
I
you
was
knew there
pleased.
Was no chalk in the house.
And I witnessed, God helping me find that piece of chalk.
That's right, and that's the other amazing thing. And with Shirley's psychic ability, is it is definitely a God-given gift, and you have always given God the glory, and you did have faith from a very young age.
Of course.
Yes, so He is part of it. We know where it came from. So in the next chapter, this is your actually. Let me say this. The next chapter is about sort of the first apparition that you saw, but it's not really your first paranormal experience. You actually mentioned in the car earlier today that something else had occurred, and I vaguely remember it. I was too young to remember, but you have told me before. So can you repeat that story that you told me earlier today?
Oh, was this about
just briefly? Yeah. Just tell us
well,
kind of what happened.
I was maybe 4 years old, and I slept in a double bed, or maybe a single bed, I can't remember, with my older sister, Cynthia, a year older than me, so we were 4 and 5. And we kind of snuggled up against each other. But this particular night, I felt something was in the room with me, a strange presence. And, when I looked up, there was a giant hand over my head that looked kind of like a monstrous gorilla-type hand with long fingers and just huge, covered my whole head. And I knew intuitively if I would move that this hand, that I probably wouldn't survive. It would just, I would be dead if I moved. So I stood as steady as I could, trying to get the attention of my sister by scratching her back and poking her just with one finger. And I was sweating, my heart was palpitating, and I just thought this was the end. And this went on for hours.
What seemed like hours.
What it seemed like hours. I mean, for me, it felt like hours, yes. And but it's still just it was the scariest thing I ever experienced. You know, I must have fallen asleep at one point. I told my mother the next day, and of course she believed me because she believed in she was superstitious, and she understood and believed me. And to this day, 50 plus years later, I remember it so clearly, like it was yesterday.
Mm-hmm. And it's nice to be believed by your mother, by the way.
Yes,
when
it
something
is.
happens,
Right.
not to say that it's your imagination or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that's quite a story. And then, years later, and other things probably happened in between, but in the book, years later, we talked about, I ghost wrote Shirley's book, by the way, that's what I'm saying, we.
Yes, she did a great job.
I am a professional writer. But the chapter 3 talks about our step-grandfather, and this was the first apparition that you saw. So can you just tell a little bit about it? We're not going to tell the whole story, but
Yeah,
in
a nutshell, right?
Yes.
We were devastated. He was our step grandfather, and we were very fond of him.
And you were about
I was
10 or
maybe
11.
10, 11.
No, a little bit, maybe a little older.
11 or
12-ish.
11 and a half, maybe. I can't remember. All I know that I was devastated, and we didn't really know how to process death. And we just kind of felt
We had just
at a
buried
loss.
him. Did we just bury him that day?
I don't
Or it was
remember.
really
I
close to
honestly
when
don't
he was
really
just
remember.
buried. I feel like we just buried him.
Yeah, it could have been.
Mm-hmm.
So I was
Died of a heart
outside. I'm sorry, I'm not outside. I was looking out the window and just wondering what life was all about, what death was all about, and just it was just so strange because we didn't know anyone, I don't think, that had died at that age. So I'm staring out the window, looking down. A car comes riding up the hill, slowly. I'm staring at the car in a trance, and all of a sudden, my grandfather poked his head out the window, slowly, turns and looks. I'm maybe at the second floor level, looks at me and just waves. Slowly, driving slowly up the hill. Smiling. Biggest smile you can ever see, happiness in his heart. Just driving slowly up the hill. I'm in shock. My heart, once again, palpitating. I felt like it was pounding out of my chest. My eyes, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And just disappeared into thin air. Just continued driving up the hill. In a car? This was just so, I couldn't understand it. So I finally got myself together, and I ran over to Brenda, which was probably not very far from me, maybe a few feet or so.
I was in the other room, I think.
Or the other room, okay. I ran over to Brenda and told her what happened.
Yeah.
And of course she believed me, too,
did.
because she knew that strange things happened, especially in
Yeah.
that house, too.
Yes.
But we had a lot of
Yes.
crazy experiences and
Yes.
things
The house
happen.
had a lot of things that happened.
yeah.
There's a picture of the house in the book.
Yeah.
And
Yes, so-
it was it was old.
Right. So that was
house was already 100
that was
years old.
mysterious. Like so many years later, I never forget that story.
That was your first
My first-
actual apparition that
that
you saw.
yes.
And
That manifested before my own eyes, and
And I'll read just the last sentence because this is just the truth from that chapter. It says, "Little did I know, it had a big effect on her, but little did I know this would surely not be the last brush with people and things from beyond." And that couldn't be more true.
Yes.
Because there's another 35 chapters,
Oh.
each chapter dealing with some sort of psychic, paranormal, spiritual phenomena. Yeah.
Yes.
It's the truth. Okay, so the next chapter we call Not Child's Play, and it's actually about our experience with the Ouija board. Probably one of the scariest chapters in the book. We're not going to read anything from it.
You think that was the most scary?
Well, I think most people are pretty afraid of the Ouija board and what it can open up,
Yeah.
the portals that it can
Right.
open. So we go into detail about what happened with us. And it's eerie, maybe
It's one of the
not
most
super-
eerie, not
yes.
scary, but that was the
No,
eerie.
it's scary to
yeah.
other people.
Okay.
Because most people don't experience anything. We were constantly
That's
experiencing
true.
things because of
Yeah.
you. Now, we did, you and I, and I
Right.
never knew it was probably because of her, because we didn't really learn about your psychic life
Sorry.
until way later.
No.
It's okay. No problem. You made it. You're still alive.
Yeah.
And so other things happened in our different homes while she was a child, and while we were children, and they're interesting. They're interesting to hear. We won't get into those now, but they're in the book. When you kind of came of age, when you became a young adult, basically, you were kind of going through things. And for me, in writing your book and being there also, I remember this being kind of a turning point for you. It was a period where literally Christianity came knocking on your door, and you kind of just went with it. You were curious. We were raised Catholic. We were. And it was different. And so you were just open to it,
Yes.
And so I am going to read just the first chapter, the first paragraph, so you kind of know what was happening. We call Chapter 8 A Religious Experience. And at one point in my early 20s, the only bright spot in my life was my daughter, and a year later, my son. Everything at this time wasn't going all that well. I married very young, and it was a little trying sharing a home with in-laws and company, and frankly, I just felt sort of stuck. The energy in the air was not good, and as much as I tried, I couldn't escape the negative feelings. One day while visiting my mom, who lived nearby, there was a knock at the door. When I answered, there stood a humble-looking young lady with a warm, smiling face. She was about my age and carried a black, leather-bound book in her hand. She asked if she could talk to me about God. Without hesitation, I invited her in and offered her cookies and hot chocolate. I'll leave it at that. That was kind of just the start of this period in your life. It was kind of a short, kind of a brief period. However, things happened during this period when you were sort of trying out this new church. And I'll leave it at that. This period led to probably one of the scariest, right, chapters?
Yes, I would say.
Yes. That always gives people chills whenever they hear this story, and we tell it in detail in the book. It is called The Creature, and it's a frightening situation. You're a new parent, and and something very scary happens. So we're going to leave it there for now. There's more to cover. The book is available, and we will put up the information in a sec. That you can get it through us, and you can get it through us. It's also on Amazon, but if you get it through us,
I think if you there will be a few perks.
Yes, we have a little surprise.
One being we will have a raffle for a free reading.
There you go.
And also some maybe simple yes or no psychic questions answered for you.
That's if you purchase the book from us, not Amazon.
Right.
We're actually having some issues with Amazon. We prefer you get it from us.
Right.
We promise we'll get it in your hands as soon as possible.
Yes, a lot quicker than
Yes.
Amazon and
Yes.
Yes.
Now, before we let you go completely, there is one little issue we just wanted to mention, and that is our podcast is called Channeling Joan, and we're calling it
Coming
that.
through. Joan coming through.
All right, cool. Joan.
Well, boy, finally, it's about time you stop talking, Missy. No, I understand. And this is very important because I want this show to go on. So, what have you got to say?
Yes. Well, we're actually taking your lead, Joan. You mentioned to us that it might be a good idea to have some sort of a
Yes,
contract with you on the other side.
Yes, I did. There's so many sharks out there. Oh,
Yes.
you better take,
Yes.
you better
That's
take care of yourself.
Yes, thank you. And so you suggested that we get some kind of contract.
I sure did.
And
And,
so-
I suggest that it be a ghost contract because right now, honey, I'm a ghost. I'm a spirit.
Yes, exactly. And that's, some people are going to question that, and that's the reason for wanting
They
to
can
have-
question all they want. It's me. It's really me here in the flesh.
Yes, yes, and it's exciting when you come through, for sure. So what we're going to do is just show you.
I'm going to show you
when-
something
when
that I
we're
want you to know that you better not give these ladies any problems at all because here it is. I signed it myself. It's Joan Rivers signing the ghost contract. They are the special new two that are going to make it to the top. No.
Well, with your help, yes.
Yes. See, and you see right there, I signed on the dotted line. That's it. Okay, that's enough.
And there you have it. Thank you, Joan.
Anything else?
Thank you, Joan.
Anything else, Brenda?
Yeah. Well, I think that's it for this show.
You don't want to ask me any questions?
Well, anything you want to add into what we've talked about so far?
No, I found it very interesting, and I think that all of you out there should purchase the book.
Thank you, Joan.
Yes, and this show will go on.
Yay. All right. Well, Shirley, till next time.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you, Joan, for coming through.
Yeah, we love it.